in 1917, the San Francisco Main Library was declared at capacity in 1944. Since then, 4 different studies have been completed, all of them reaching the same conclusion. It would not be feasible to remodel and expand the existing facility. Future growth would require a new building. This is the story of how the new main library was built.
Today we break ground for a new $104.5 million structure, a new main San Francisco library for the 21st century. With nearly 400,000 square feet of interior space, the new main library will have twice the space and 5 times the seating capacity of the old main library when it opens. Many people in both volunteer and official capacities have worked, some for decades, in this process to bring us this dream now of a new main library right on this immediate site. For them and for all residents of San Francisco, this groundbreaking is a dream come true.
Really, we set our eyes on the stars, and we're almost there.
Yeah. So how do you feel today after all this
I
work?
just feel marvelous. You know, it's just terribly exciting, really wonderful. And it's a great tribute to people. It shows that when citizens care about something, they can do anything they want to do.
I was originally hired by the Friends of the Library in the beginning of 1987 to work with them and help develop the bond initiative and to lobby the Board of Supervisors to put the issue on the ballot. And then when we actually went on the ballot, I went off the Friends payroll and went to work specifically for the campaign committee. It was the presidential election in 1988. We had members of the Board of Supervisors in Congress on the ballot. We had 26 local propositions, of which we were the first one, Proposition A. Our strategy basically involved a combination of mailing literature to Republican and targeted Democratic households because we found that those were the least likely to be opposed to us. And most important, we did phone banks, I believe, for 5 weeks. And we called 45,000 households and actually talked to people in 35,000 of those households and answered any questions that they had about the bonds. And I think that that was the part of our strategy that probably was really the winning part that gave us such a high percentage of votes. I think the combination of a good issue, a good plan for a new main library, and a real dedicated group of volunteers who are willing to work very hard to make it happen led to the success. And it was very successful. We received 76% of the vote, which is an extremely high vote for a bond issue. And everybody who worked on that should feel very proud that they were part of it.
Well, I'd just like to say with all conviction that the library really was my lifesaver as a youngster, because I grew up in a housing project, and it was through libraries that I learned about the world, that the seeds to travel were planted, and I can't think of a better gift for this generation to give to future San Franciscans than this new library.
Well, after the election, yeah, we kind of went, phew, but we also realized we had a ton of work to do to move ahead, because the city had never built a building like this before. So there was no process to do it. Who's in charge of this thing? And so we really had to start fairly quickly sorting out who does what to who, when, and why. And because we have the commission involved, we have City Hall involved, we have the Chief Administrative Officer involved, you know, all of those things, there was no track to follow. And so we made it up, basically, as we went. And I think it's been rather amazing. In fact, I was just talking with someone who knows City Hall very well, and he said it's just amazing that we're on schedule, on budget, on program still.
In October of 1989, a library building consultant, consulting firm, HBW and Associates out of Texas, came on board and helped me and others at the library to organize a series of community focus groups to pull people together who were particularly interested in either services to children or local history or business. There were 17 different focus groups, as well as several library staff focus groups that got together to articulate what it was that they felt the new main library should do in each of those particular areas. We assembled a great deal of very useful information, and working with the HBW staff, proceeded then to develop our program, which essentially was our set of instructions to the architects as to what our library had to be.
But through that process, we defined what we wanted the building to do as a library. And then, through the Chief Administrative Officer, who is legally the contracting agency for this whole project, got him to agree to let us call for proposals by architects worldwide. And then we set up a process. Basically, it took the CAO plus the commission, essentially, to agree to this process, and they did. We called for proposals based on credentials and projects, not how you would design a library, because I wasn't interested in that. Because my feeling was the library we were going to design did not exist, and that no one had ever built one like it. So I wasn't interested in libraries they'd already built.
When it was passed by the voters in 1988 as the bond issue, we thought to ourselves, we've done a lot of libraries. We know this city. We should find the best architect to collaborate with. We knew it would be a famous architect and somebody from either national or international reputation. And we thought to ourselves, what firm does the greatest monumental civic buildings that we know about? And immediately we thought of Paycop Fried, which had done buildings all over the world, which were monumental and very important. They know how to put a building like this together. So we phoned, and Ingo Fried answered the phone when I asked to speak to somebody about the library, and that was really how it started.
I wanted to do something in San Francisco very badly. I wanted to work with somebody who understood libraries very well. And here was Kathy coming here with the whole package. So it was wonderful.
We got about 32 firms indicated that they were interested. And so then we set up a screening committee of the city architect, the dean of architecture at UC Berkeley, technical, the AIA chair, people who would know the capabilities of the firms, and set up criteria. They had to have built a project of $100 million. They had to have worked in a public project and kind of worked through. They had to have the capital to underwrite that kind of a project and a big enough team. So the technical committee went through and narrowed it down to 6 firms. So then we interviewed the firms. A key part of this process was one of our former commissioners, Marjorie Stern, who you all know, got it in her head that a person we needed to have involved was Ada Louise Huxtable, who had been the architectural critic for the New York Times and just recently retired at that time. And And Mrs. Stern had read she's written a number of, read some of her material and all that. She became convinced that she'd be very important, and she was right. And she had just an amazing knowledge because she was able to say, well, now this is a really good firm, but they have too much work to do now. And this is a really good firm, but they're great on airports, but I don't think they'll work on this. This is a really good firm, but you need this principal to be assigned. And so she worked through that, narrowed it, and then we set up a broad-based committee that included City Hall people, community people, commissioners. I think it was 16 or 18 people on that committee. And so the architects came in and presented their case. Again, not their design. And it was unanimous. The feeling was that the best architects in the world at this particular time for this particular project was I.M. Pei and firm. And that the principal in that firm of the three, Pei, Cobb, and Freed, the person best suited for this project was James Ingo Freed.
The architectural firm, which is actually two firms working in association, that decision was made in June of '89. Between June of '89 and April of '90, the city and the architects were in contract negotiation. So it took that long for their contract to be negotiated and certified. Okay. In the meantime, I was hired, we had an earthquake, and we did the building program in that order. We also went on our trip to visit libraries in France and Germany in January of that year.
This means a great deal to me. As you know, I have quite a few volumes of work that will be in the shelves in the new main library, and I'd like for everyone to be able to read them in comfort and in a beautiful setting. So I'm very excited about this happening.
So I took the Jim Freed and Kathy Simon from SMWM, Steve Calder from the Commission, Kathy Page and myself to Europe for 10 days. I wanted the architects to understand how I saw a library. And the best way to do that is to say, okay, this is a really good library from its functional aspect, but it's ugly as all get out. The Bibliothèque Publique d'Information at the Pompidou Center they deal with 16,000 people a day in that library. It's modern circus architecture as far as I'm concerned. But it works, it functions. And it has flexible spaces and those kind of things. And so I said, okay, I want a building that works like this but doesn't look like it. So in Paris, we looked at the Bibliothèque Nationale, the Pompidou Center, the Bibliothèque Sainte-Geneviève, La Villette, the Mediathèque at La Villette, the Videothèque in Paris, and fortunately I knew the directors of all those libraries, and I was very proud of my colleagues.
The value of the trip was really multivalent because it had to do with making a relationship among 5 people who are going to be on a long trip together, a trip through 7 years or something like that. It had to do with an education of us about libraries and you about architecture. And what was interesting was at the end of it, we summarized what we thought a great library should have in it. And I think to a great extent, we've met that challenge.
So we were doing a number of preparatory tasks which led us up to April of '90 when we actually could officially start working with the architects. And we could share our building program with them and talk through all the issues involved. Between April of '90 and September of that year, we were in the schematic design phase. And during this time, James Freed and Kathy Simon took the lead in designing the building proper. They came up with the strategies that were required to fit our program into the block of space that they had, which we still have. So September of 1990, the schematic design was completed and was presented to the library and the Library Commission, and was met with great enthusiasm and approval. Then from that time through April of '91, late April of '91, we moved into the design development phase of the project. And during that period of time, the building underwent a great deal of evolution and refinement.
It's really very emotional for me. I've been working for libraries since 1957, and I really believe it's a cultural and educational heart of the city. And to see it coming to fruition is really so rewarding.
Around the end of April of '91, the design development phase, or the building at the end of design development, was presented and approved by the Library Commission, and I should mention the Arts Commission too. The Library Commission, while it has overall approval authority, must also work with the Arts Commission, which has authority over the exterior facades of the building.
Making a building that worked with the Beaux-Arts-like lining of the space, making a building that worked with the non-Beaux-Arts-like life of the city. You had the heart of the city and the belly of the city. One side we have the heart of the city, the other side is the belly. And the belly needs as much access as the heart, maybe more. And how to make a building that will be seen as not just a clone, but a genuine struggle between competing visions of the city.
We found as we moved into the construction documents phase that we still had some issues hanging out there. I mean, one good example is the Pioneer Monument. We waited until spring of '92 before that really could be resolved. The hang-up there was the environmental impact report and its tardiness in being completed. None of the deciding bodies could make a decision until after the EIR came out. So nonetheless, we did proceed, and again, it was a lot of evolution. We were still pushing and pulling the building around in many different ways, and also identifying things that we hadn't yet thought of. We were filling out the design. One of my major goals during the design period was to involve the staff, get as much participation from the staff as I reasonably could, and to make sure that not only were their voices heard, but their concerns were incorporated into the building. So from the beginning, when we had the focus groups, we had staff involvement. There were 3 different focus groups that were simply library staff. We set up a series of meetings with each of these staff groups at which representatives of the design team were present. And I feel that the architects really did listen, and they've really tried to make an honest effort to respond to our needs as much as they possibly could.
It's such a wonderful event to be here on the opening day of the groundbreaking of the library. I've always had a love for the library. In fact, my very first published piece when I was 8 years old was about giving money to the libraries. And so I hope that everybody in San Francisco does the same.
After we had some issues around indoor air quality, some concerns by the staff and the public during the design development phase, the Librarians Guild and the union got together with me, and we decided to have a health and safety committee for the new main library.
We just want to make sure it's safe, easy to maintain building, and so that's what we're working for. But I think as a result, a positive thing that happened is we got a man named Hal Levin involved in the project, who's very knowledgeable about the properties of a lot of construction materials.
Also, the carpeting and the floor coverings are going to be installed with materials that do not have volatile, unhealthy adhesives in them. So we're fortunate in that the industry apparently now is moving toward being safer, and we are riding the crest of that direction. They're also putting into our specs a building commissioning process, which is an expanded version of what normally happens with a building. It means that once everything is installed, the engineers will run all of the systems in the building, the HVAC, all the mechanical systems, at full tilt, I mean fully operational, to make sure that they operate the way they're supposed to. So I think we're doing about everything we can to make sure we have a healthy building. Well, the EIR was certified in February. There were several public hearings where people spoke to their concerns, which ranged all over the map. There are some neighbors here, people who live on McAllister Street, who are very concerned about the noise levels during construction. They had things to say. To others who are concerned actually with the Asian Art Museum, which is scheduled to move into the old main library. The EIR, and this is something people forget quite often, covers three elements: the new main library, the Asian Art Museum moving into the old main library, and the Fulton Street Mall between the two.
The new main library will rise up through the foundation of the old City Hall, a new building with roots in the 19th century, looking toward the 21st. It will be a worthy complement to the great cultural institutions of Civic Center, yet remain distinctively a people's institution.
The other thing that you need in a process like this, especially a political process, is a public vision for it. And Steve Coulter almost single-handedly, especially, but with the help of Dale Carlson, has fought for the project and fought for its excellence in the community in terms of everything from the Pioneer Monument, which he went to bat to get moved, to the high quality of the materials inside. He has been an advocate, a fighter, a bringing together of people. He's envisioning a great library.
There was a structure on the site that had to be demolished, and that's the building known as 100 Larkin Street, also known as the Hospitality House. It was a USO center built in 1941, and it needed to be removed from the site. Given the everyone involved in the project's concern over handling that building that has great affection from many people in this town, we wanted to handle it in a respectful way. So we mounted a pretty aggressive campaign to connect with the local historic preservation community to try to find somebody who would be willing to move it. In the end, there really were no serious offers to come forward. There were a number of people said it's really a shame, but no one actually stepped forward to do that. But the Building Trades Council of San Francisco, which is an organizing group of over 30 different construction trades unions, came forward to help us tear it down. They had actually built it in 1941 with donated labor, and they thought it would be a great idea to take it apart again. So in April, they did just that, and the building is now a fond memory. Farmers Market is held on Wednesdays and Sundays, and a lot of those farmers park their pickups, or they used to, on Marshall Square. The people from our project worked with the city's Department of Traffic and Parking to negotiate with the Farmers Market staff to try to figure out another way to handle that parking. And I believe that the efforts have been very successful. We now have metered parking on Hyde Street that the farmers can use, and the city is prepared to expand the metered parking if at the height of summer it needs to be. So I feel that we've addressed the concerns of the farmers really quite well.
Libraries are funny places. It wants to be everything at once, private, public, intelligent. It wants to be a place where you go to meet people, although no librarian will ever tell you that. It wants to be a place where you can take over from the old function of the public piazza. It wants to be a place where you can have parties. It wants to be a place where you can have private delight in a public space. It wants everything, in short.
Well, the soul of any city is its public library, and this is one of the happiest days imaginable. In 1992, laying the cornerstone of a brand new main library for this magnificent city. There will be generations of children and adults who will find the meaning of life in this fabulous building that will rise on this spot.